Hey guys, my name is Ben. I work here at Verge Permaculture, and I just recently had the privilege of interviewing Abby and Steve from Big Calm. Now, Big Calm is a permaculture-inspired tiny homestead community for remote workers. Now, if you're the kind of person who's entertained the idea of living in an eco-village or a tiny home, or even just finding a way to live out in nature while still having, a a job on the computer. Maybe you work remote. Maybe you don't need to live in a city and you want to get out of the city. That's what Big Calm is all about. It's nestled right in the Kootenays, and I'm so excited for what this Big Calm Tiny Homestead community has to offer both BC and the world at large. I think it's a really great model that can be kind of implemented in lots of other places. And I'm so glad that it's Abby and Steve that are doing it. They're not some big property management powerhouse couple that are here trying to run the show and make billions of dollars. They're, a regular, I shouldn't say regular, they're definitely above average, but, you know, Abby has worked in biotech for a really long time and Steve works in disaster management. They're just a normal couple looking to change how we view our living situations in the Western world. And the best thing about it is Abby actually took our PDC last spring. She was in our first online PDC, the same one that I first took last year. So it's just so cool to see what kinds of things our past students get up to. And Big Calm is one of them. So stay tuned, and I hope you enjoy the interview. I'd love to start by just getting a sense of who you guys are, kind of your backgrounds, and how that eventually led to Big Calm.
Yeah, so we were big city folk living in Alberta and downtown Calgary. My background is I have a biotech background. Right now I'm doing communications and investor relations work for biotech companies, and have actually been doing that remotely since 2018. So even before most of the world started working remotely. And then what's your background, honey? Better you tell it than me.
Yeah, so I've kind of a meandering career path. I've worked in magazine publishing and mobile content production, worked in toy robotics and consumer electronics, and led a disaster management software company for a while. And that's taken me to, I lived for quite some time in Montreal and a little bit in New York and Toronto, and then more recently in Calgary, and have been working the last few years with a variety of different startups and nonprofits, basically social impact projects that I'm just very, very positive about, or that I really like the founders of. And that's been in areas of alternative energy and mental health, in financial feminism, whole range of different spaces. So I get to work with some really interesting projects and help them on advisory or grant writing or so on. And my background is the business side of tech generally, or social innovation projects, kind of on the management side or the strategy side. And I have a marketing background, and have been working remote for at least a few years, and semi-remote, I guess, for a lot longer than that. And then that kind of brought us to where we are now.
That's interesting. Given your backgrounds, I would not immediately think, oh yeah, these guys would totally start a tiny homestead subdevelopment community.
Yeah, it's well, we first got interested in, I guess, alternative living structures, housing, and our first exposure to that kind of thing was earth ships.
Sorry, I don't know if you heard that big crack of thunder outside. There's a giant storm taking place
We
over.
got that last night, actually. It flew over here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry to
Wow.
interrupt. I just wanted to preface that if you hear that, that's
Yeah. Okay. No, good to know. um, what was I? Oh, right. So earth ships. And just how it's an enclosed system where rainwater is harvested, you use the power and warmth of solar energy. It's a closed system, so you use the gray water to feed the plants. And it just was really appealing to us because it was a very sustainable way of living and something that you can build with, I think they're built with tires or something. So something every individual can do. Really got us excited, but then we realized that kind of the climate that we were in probably wasn't ideal for that kind of structure. Then we kind of said, well, what kind of structure would make sense? So we looked into rammed earth, really excited about that. And then from there, it was kind of, their permaculture came into the story for me. Just living sustainably, again, cycling energy through systems and so on. So, and then at the same time, we're like, well, we can't practice permaculture or build an alternative structure in the middle of downtown Calgary. So we said, well, where do we want to go? Where do we want to move? And you said, well, it's obvious. We want to move to BC in the Nelson area because he's been a long time, he's had a long time love affair with Nelson. And he took me there on one of our earlier dates and I fell in love with it as well. So we went on, I think, 3 different tours of the area and actually all over BC, and just fell in love with this Locan Valley. It just spoke to us. And found this property that is now Big Calm. And yeah.
I think for me, well, both of us, we spend a lot of time in front of the screen. Yeah. We're online a lot, and we make our living through online work. And so, what brought us to this type of project partly is a recognition that we need to get away from the desk for a little bit, get our hands dirty, breathe some fresh air, just get out closer to nature. Also, my background in disaster management, where I was, swimming with that crowd for some time, that was a really interesting perspective on the macro issues that the world is facing and the resilience that we need at all levels, from individual to international society, and trying to figure out what we can do just as a couple people in that, and what the world needs a little bit more of, I think, in terms of places to live and work and play and so on, and that community aspect. And so, part of that kind of that yearning for nature, or to get out to be able to do some things that are a little bit more flexible in terms of, outdoor work or garden work or structures, that sort of stuff, was also combined with a recognition that we needed to maybe improve our balance with the screen time, still keeping that obviously as a key part of our lives, but also maybe build up or rejuvenate some of those manual skills or life skills that are going to be more and more important.
Yeah. So for anybody who's watching this on YouTube in the future, your virtual background right now is an image from your property, right? Can you two just like move your heads to the side so we can get a full
Oh, I disappeared altogether. Let's just give them the full.
I love that. I love that so much. I know I'm only 24. I have so many friends who are working. I mean, we're all working so much behind computers right now, especially during the pandemic. Everybody's working from home. We're inundated with time on Zoom, as we're currently spending time on Zoom right now.
Yep.
And, if only more people had the ability to walk out their front door and be in a place like that virtual background behind you. Like most people are in cities, and, kind of with lockdown measures, it's especially difficult to make time to get outside and find a sense of community. And so I love that concept, like the ability to work remote, work from home. I've seen a similar kind of alternative living situation catered towards people who work remotely. It's something like a property owner would own property in Toronto, New York, LA, Vancouver, let's say, and you pay a flat fee of $1,500 a month, and you get to travel between those places however you want. Bedding, linens, kitchen utensils, all that stuff is included, and then you have the freedom to work remotely from wherever you want. So, it's a concept that is, I don't know, taking hold. I feel like I love this idea and your niche that you're finding here. It's like people who want to work remotely, people who want to live outdoors, find a sense of purpose, find more connection with nature, and shake up the mundane of living just a regular urban lifestyle. So I think that's so awesome.
There's so many different flavors of that idea happening right now. We're one sort of stream of that much larger river. There's a big movement around the staycation, or kind of longer trips or vacations closer to home, or certainly in more natural spots. There's the digital nomad space that you're kind of mentioning, where you can move around between different kind of franchise or outpost locations and sample different parts of the country or the world that way. There's kind of the eco village or commune or co-op approach as well, and that has a whole bunch of different flavors too. I think more and more people are recognizing that, well, a few things, that they don't have to be tethered to a city necessarily for their work, and so then they can choose maybe a more ideal place to live, or they can sample more ideal places to visit. And really kind of put in, I think the pandemic certainly put this into focus, is that you're the people that you're around during a lockdown or a quarantine, or that you can actually be productive or even more productive when you're working remotely, and still have maybe a better balance with some of the chores or the activities that you want to do day to day.
Yeah, and I think at least this pandemic for me has made me really reflect on what it is that I need and want in my own life, and a lot of the reasons why I drifted towards urban centers. I mean, obviously, being a young guy, I want to go out and have fun with friends, go to bars, go to restaurants, things like that. But I feel like my quality of life has been far higher living as remotely as I have been. I'm living on Rob and Michelle's farm here in central Alberta.
Oh, wonderful.
It's quite remote. I'm like an hour and a half southwest of Edmonton, 2.5 hours north of Calgary. There is a little urban center nearby, but for the most part, it's the small local community that we have here.
We grew up around that area too.
Oh, no way. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah,
it's really grown on me. Like, I'm from Toronto originally, but I must say Alberta's really grown on me. I'm loving it, especially here.
You're so lucky to live on the farm with Rob and Michelle. There must be stuff happening constantly. We've been following them, and just amazing. I remember so distinctly. I'd wanted to take a permaculture course, and we spoke with Rob
pretty early, but
much in advance of the pandemic. And then the pandemic hit, and we were in the middle of the transaction, I guess, to purchase the land, and it only kind of gave us the extra assurance that this is something that we need to do. And at that same time, I remember getting an email from Verge saying, this is our first online PDC, and signed up for it. And that's when I was a first online PDC Verge grad. Oh, really? You were in that course?
Yeah, I was in that course.
See, this is where Zoom falls short. It's not perfect.
I did connect with some people from the course, but obviously it's not the same as being in person.
It's not. There's certain things.
So fun. We did a PDC at the same time.
We did. Yeah. So, and that just made me, I knew it was something I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I see permaculture as a way that every individual can do something that does make a difference, even if it's on a scale that, it's not going to make an impact, it's, visible from a, high level or whatever, but you can make an impact as an individual, and you can, well, in our case, we're trying to build a community out of
Mm.
it. Community is really important. We wanted to move to an area that's obviously isolated, but we didn't want to be isolated. Community is one of the most, if not the most important thing. And permaculture, working on projects and taking care of land together and growing food, it's one of the most early early foundations of relationships. So yeah, just
That's so inspiring to hear that was kind of a strong impetus behind what you're doing now. Because I mean, that PDC for me is the reason why I'm here at all. Like I remember during the PDC, I was like, oh, what can I do? What can I do? And I started dividing and potting up perennials from the cottage, my family cottage. And I
Around
met,
Toronto?
I mean, what an awesome way to tap into community that was. And I was
Yeah.
meeting people. I just had a little roadside stand. So many people coming by. But something like what you're doing obviously has, you know, much larger impact. And I feel like this is a good transition now to talk about what Big Calm is to you and kind of what you hope to accomplish with it.
how much time do you have? Well, we say that it's a Big Calm is a permaculture driven tiny homestead community for remote workers.
Cool. That's an awesome
So
one-liner. Yeah.
yeah, so yeah. Do you want to elaborate?
Yeah, it's kind of marrying those things we talked about, the trends around remote work. I think the importance of permaculture and the principles behind it, and the reconnection with local community, or you know, bioregionalism, and kind of that essential proximity to nature. I think that many people are missing. Those three things coming together, I think, is kind of the sweet spot that we're aiming for, at least with Big Calm. We like the location, you know, in the Silcan Valley, of it being a little bit, it's not really a bedroom community or a ski town. It's you kind of have to intentionally travel here, and there's a really nice local or regional community, different artisans and shops, and tradespeople, and
Farmers.
farmers. Yeah, a lot of kind of
Nice.
sustainable food production. So we like that as well. The location itself is nice. It's you know, it's got this really nice meadow that lends itself well to kind of a pocket neighborhood for tiny house community. It backs onto wooded crown land, so it's got a whole mountain slope on one side and then valley views on the other, with the river and the lake not too far. And
So tell me more about kind of the property itself, and if someone were to buy into this, what that would look like.
yeah, so it's a first of all, it's a rental community. So it's not a subdivision. And that was something we did look at, but would be very difficult to do, quite expensive for us to start with. And also we wanted to see who would gravitate towards the project to begin with. And so a rental agreement just seems something that, you know, is fairly standard.
Not to interrupt, but how loud is the rain in the background for me? Can you hear it?
No, it's
Okay,
okay. We can't
great.
really hear anything.
It's quite thunderous overhead, but as long as you guys, that's okay.
Just let us know if your safety is ever in question.
I will.
Okay.
Yeah, a couple nights ago, there was like a really dynamic light show. Yeah, the lightning was intense. Yeah. You might be missing a pretty good.
Sorry, continue about the rental aspect.
Yeah, so it's a rental community. We're looking at having about 10, maybe 12 serviced pads for tiny houses on wheels. Most of those would be long-term rentals. A couple would be set aside for guest stays. The folks that we're looking for, you know, are people that would want this sort of the same thing, that have a tiny house on wheels or are looking at the tiny house lifestyle, kind of going into that eyes open, looking for a spacious place to park it. There's obviously campgrounds and parking lots and driveways and so on. And we wanted to have something that was a little bit more homestead like, so that there is space, that there's still a community as well, so that we're a little bit more isolated, but we're not isolating ourselves, that there's still a community dynamic to it.
So what comes with each of the pads? Like how much space do you kind of get? Do you have like a garden plot? Is it a community garden? Do you have like a driveway, like a yard? What is that like?
Yeah, so we don't have the exact side of each pad itself, but it would be essentially you'd have your tiny house and then a pad around you, and then still some space of just kind of the meadow to yourself. So you're not parked right up, against or right next to somebody, and you can like wave to each other in through the window. We kept it to a lower number of tiny house pads just so there's a bit more space and privacy.
There's 37 acres altogether.
Yeah, 37.
Very cool. Yeah,
And
sorry, continue.
no, I was just going to mention that the land is unzoned, which is why we're allowed to do this in the first place. There are one of the major challenges right now with the tiny house movement is finding a legal place to park the tiny homes. So having an unzoned piece of land is we were fortunate to get that.
Unzoned land. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, we're quite close to the ALR zone land. We're just kind of higher elevation, but it's unzoned, so it's legal to park the tiny.
Yeah. Most areas have an unofficial community plan or agricultural land reserve zoning, or just zoning that restricts the number of dwellings or structures or even guest places that could be there. And so that's one of the reasons, I think, more broadly, that there is such a housing challenge in the country, but also that it's been difficult for people with tiny houses to find attractive places, is because largely it's kind of regulated out, and for fairly maybe legacy reasons in many areas. And so there are unzoned areas across the country, and we just happened to stumble on one that had nice topography for this type of
super
dwelling.
interesting. Yeah, no, I've been kind of looking into tiny houses myself. I mean, kind of in anticipation of this interview, but also for myself, like the ability to have something I could just pull behind a truck and take wherever I want. And I mean, apparently you can kind of get away with it considered as like a trailer, but then if you want to then buy a piece of raw land and, park it and make it a permanent home, then it looks a bit sketchy. You need, a structure with an address that you say you live at full time, and then this one's just like, it's a trailer, it's for guests and stuff.
Yeah. The banks and insurers don't make it easy, especially for the tinies on wheels, because or even under, say, 500 square feet. Some jurisdictions are very kind of biased towards large dwellings and perhaps larger than most people need as well.
It is. We've proven them wrong.
Yeah, you guys. That's funny. I know people struggling with one, trying to make one tiny house on wheels work and getting bogged down with the logistics and the regulations. And you're like, here's some land, here's 10 tiny houses on wheels.
But we still do have one. We actually have two structures that came with the property, and we're fixing up one that's on foundation, and it has to be to kind of satisfy some of those other requirements for the wheels.
Yeah.
So sorry, just back to like what comes with an individual who rents land from that space. So you have, the tiny house, you have the pad, and you have kind of some of your own yard space. And then
so each pad is serviced electricity, water, sewage. We're putting in a type 2 septic system, which is much cleaner than type 1. You get, there is space to put out a deck, also possibility for raised garden bed or kind of portable gardens around your tiny home, but we also have an 1,800 square foot garden that we're
formerly certified organic garden.
That,
cool. Previous owners had.
Yeah, and we're it's our first year working with that garden, so really putting my permaculture knowledge to the test. So we have a forest sauna that needs a little bit of a upgrade, but that's
Forest
something.
sauna.
Forest sauna, yeah. So a sauna in the middle of the forest and amongst some
Yeah.
cedars. It's quite lovely.
I think from the original builders around probably the 70s, it's an old log sauna, just
awesome.
in the cedar glen in the backwoods, which the living roof needs some work, but it's otherwise in pretty good shape, and it's on our fix
You'll
up list.
definitely have to send me some pictures of
Yeah, for sure.
of stuff along the way, and I'll have my editing guy Derek kind of throw it up as we go.
Sure.
Cool.
We also have some trails on the property in the forest, and I guess individuals can hike up into Crown Land if they want. We have 2 water sources, a spring as well as a creek. We have a Quonset hut that'll serve kind of as a workshop, and we'll have a shared tool library. So everyone kind of has access to tools, and that can be shared. What else?
Plans for a root cellar, and perhaps some honey on tap type bee bee houses.
We'd love to add some bees. A greenhouse. I can't believe I almost forgot the greenhouse, but a greenhouse we definitely want to put one of those in.
And then at least one, maybe a couple kind of forest office or studios that people can, if they're in the community, it would be there as an amenity, or others that might come as a guest stay. They could use that to work on their book or their composition or their code or whatever, and just have a really nice peaceful view for however many weeks they need to do that.
Kind of like a retreat.
And then so renters would have access to kind of all of those amenities as part of your living fee for the space.
Yeah, and we foresee fixing up or working on projects together is a great community builder, but also things like potlucks and get-togethers, and just really focused on building a community outside of the or beyond the property. There's a Rails to Trails path, so it runs all the way up and down the valley. It's great for biking or running or walking in the summer, and there's cross-country skiing or snowshoeing in the winter. There's fishing nearby, a lake, kayaking.
Yeah, mountain biking, hiking.
Mountain biking.
Sounds like a pretty sweet place to live. I spent 4 years living in Kelowna, where I attended university.
Oh, yeah.
So that's in the Okanagan Valley. Where is the Slocan Valley in relation to?
It's
one valley.
Yeah, maybe 2 valleys over.
Yeah,
kind of. There's Okanagan, and then over is kind of Arrow Lakes, and then over the next ridge is Slocan Lake, which is the valley that we're in.
East from the Okanagan.
Yeah, east, and then to go even one valley further east would be Kootenay Lake, which is where what Nelson is off of, and areas like Caslow and Crawford Bay. So kind of those 4 valleys. We're in the one to the west, the west of Kootenay Lake and the east of Arrow Lake.
Wow. Can I ask how much rent would be at a place like that? Is that a number that you guys have worked out yet?
Yeah, so we're estimating right now it's about $18,000 a year, $1,500 a month, and that is just for the pad. We've and that's a reflection of just the cost to our internet connection is unstable. Are you there?
Oh, I can
still see you. Our internet. Okay, good. Sorry. I'm not sure where I cut out.
It looked like it froze there.
Yeah, I think it froze for a minute. So I'll just start again.
I heard all of it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So do you need me to? Okay. Do you need me to start again for the recording, or it's just carry on?
Just carry on.
Okay, I'll just carry on. We recognize that that's higher than, say, at an RV park, but we did design this to be a premium community, and we wanted to just ensure that it's truly a tiny homestead community. We've put everything we can into developing the project. It is it is reflective of the cost to develop the land and the cost to like for operating.
And it includes all of the kind of the essentials there around, snow plowing and trash collection and all of the amenities. It includes that factors in that it would include electricity, which will probably be metered out separately. But that's kind of our ballpark figure for now.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I mean,
sorry, sorry, no, and we're certainly open to decreasing rent if, for example, someone is harvesting their own energy, and that's less of a draw on the line, and then then rent would be less, and so on, and then also open to kind of other ways of paying for rent, through work, people willing to spend their time helping to improve the community.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a pretty sweet gig, considering people pay that much to be, in a tiny little box in the middle of a city that's super grungy. And I guess it requires like a reimagination or a reconfiguration of your values, or maybe not if you're someone who does value these things already. And those are going to be the kind of people you attract, in that they see value in everything else that's included. It's not all you're in the middle of a city, but you're in the middle of this like super rich and abundant ecosystem surrounded by like awesome like-minded people with really cool opportunities to like learn and grow gardens and work on projects and just like get outside at a very low cost relative to what you would have to do to find something else like that. Like if you built your own tiny house, you could probably use a bunch of salvaged materials and used materials and build it for less than what you would pay in a year's rent. But that's assuming you know how to do that kind of stuff. Otherwise, you're paying like $50,000 to $70,000 for a tiny house from the bottom up, and then you have to find land or you have to rent land on top of that. So I mean, that sounds pretty cool to me.
Yeah. And actually, one of the pleasant surprises that we've had with people reaching out to us has been some of the most interested people have really great experience with communities, including the conflict resolution aspect of it, which is super important. And so that's nice that that this kind of package is appealing to people who understand the work that goes into forming a human community, as well as the amenities that surround that.
I think a lot of people don't. Sorry, continue.
No, I'm sorry. We're very mindful of the fact that would probably be a challenge in any community. There are bound to be, with any human interaction, and possibility for disagreements, and that's something that we're aware of, and we're going into it just trying to use the right models and the right kind of the systems and communication systems to ensure that the community is as strong as possible. But like Steve said, to know that we're attracting people that have, and it's more than just one, it's several, who are who've done work in conflict resolution and so on is
that's awesome.
And not just that, but just people from all walks of life and all kind of experience. We have a soil scientist who's interested in moving there, which I'm thrilled about that, because that would be lovely, and a lot of gardeners and permaculturalists who are interested as well. So I think the story is certainly resonating with the kind of people that we'd like to welcome to Big Calm.
So yeah, how much interest have you guys had? And like, are spaces really filling up? Is there opportunity for other people to reach out and still get involved? What is that looking like? I saw on the website that you're set to kind of go live this year, maybe later this year. Is that still?
Yeah, we'll have our first tiny house roll in late summer. That'll be a guest stay unit, and then so we actually started kind of floating the idea out there with our various networks, and had a website up even before we had the property, to see if this was a crazy idea. And we were validated through the reception to that actually we're not the only ones thinking this way. And then ever since then, it's been and this has been the best part of it, is just the the response from really interesting, diverse, talented people has been really very strong, to the point where I've had to go back to the business plan a few times and kind of make it less conservative. We'd initially built in a three-phased approach, and probably could fill all of it next year, if if all of the pieces come together. One of the challenges is just that we're not the only ones thinking of building right now. Obviously, the price of lumber and all that stuff is high, so contractors are busy too. But yeah, the response from people has been really good. We've got a number of people that are, once we have all the formal kind of paperwork processes in place, that I think they're ready to sign up and move forward. And that's largely going to be next year in 2022. But we are talking with people as well that are looking at 2023. And
yeah, so the first phase is full, but we still have the other two phases. Online, we have a tiny homesteader questionnaire that's available for anyone who's interested in living at Big Calm. They can go there and fill that out, and we'll review it and reach out to them. So that's probably the fastest way for people who are interested. Yeah, what else? Did you want to go into the other aspect as far as financing and resources?
Yeah, I guess another way that folks could participate as well is that we're working on building out a basically an equity crowdfunding campaign, so that that helps us to accelerate the build out, but it also lets folks that are interested in permaculture or tiny houses or this type of remote work a project to invest and to share in the profits as that goes forward over time, including the tenants. So it's, even though it's not a purchase plot of land, it's a rental, that there would still be a kind of profit sharing dimension to that if they wanted to participate, as well as those that might not be accredited investors, large investors, but that still, they're ahead of the curve and they see kind of where the trends are in these various spaces as well. So that's another thing that we're working on for people maybe outside of the community to be a part of and to kind of follow the journey too, or to occasionally come stay with us and get a sample of it.
That's so exciting. You two are just like, just like a super awesome, wholesome couple that are starting this community, and you're inviting like equity shares and just like super like-minded individuals, and you're not like a giant sub developer that's just go and plug and play with a bunch of like cookie cutter houses. I'm just so excited by this concept. I think this is really cool. I hope we see more things like this starting to crop up as people kind of wake up and realize, oh, I don't need to live in a city all the time. Like I don't need to surround my house with pavement. There are other ways of living.
Yeah, that's true. We were actually approached by several, I guess, businesses looking. They said, "Oh, are you interested in franchising?" And we're like, first, let's get this one get this one right and get it started. But kind of surprised to hear that. But no, we're just focused on our little piece of BC for now, but it definitely does seem to be getting quite a bit of interest. People are, based on the response, people are really looking for this kind of way of life.
Yeah. Oh my God. I can imagine at least 3 or 4 people off the top of my head that would be so keen to do something like that. Maybe not specifically in the Slocan Valley. I'm probably closer to where they live, but still just the idea.
Yeah, no, it's a movement. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and actually we're seeing that movement as well through the conversations we're having with the tiny house builders. Many they have wait lists kind of going out a year or so. So there's a construction boom happening in that vertical as well. That's pretty indicative that people are maybe downscaling their lifestyles, looking to looking to live in a different place, or at least live differently, whether it's Spokane Valley or elsewhere. But that's definitely kind of a big macro trend, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, we're seeing in this area as well, like property values are increasing as well. So clearly, a lot of people are looking to get out of the city, um, shake things up.
Yeah, if you can work from anywhere, why not work
And
from?
we actually had the idea before the pandemic. We had an option to purchase on this particular property before the pandemic, which was fortuitous. And then obviously the pandemic has reinforced so many of these things um, for so many other people that yeah, we see it kind of every week in the newspaper here around property values. And
so I have kind of like two final questions that I want to ask. One is like, I'd love to know more about some of the permaculture specific elements that you're integrating into this community. Like, obviously I can think of a bunch off the top of my head, and we've already talked about a bunch. But any places where specifically you're like, like permaculture is going to be applied here, like this system is informed by this. Any of those things off the top of your head?
Yeah, so first thing that comes to my mind is water access structures.
Of course.
So lots of plans, but at the same time, I'm eager to get started, but really mindful that observation, taking time to observe, is really important. I would actually prefer a later start to implementing a permaculture design than an earlier run with not all the information. So my project, my PDC project, was on this property. So we have plans. Well, in terms of water management, gotta love the swales. Swales are really important. We have plans for those. We'd like to harvest rainwater, as well as to I guess what's the word? Well, just we're just crazy about ram pumps, so we would really like to to work on a ram pump and get some water uphill. So we have some there. Just gravity fed water, potential for micro hydro, solar panels that would also collect rainwater and would serve as a shelter for cars that need to be parked, greenhouse. The garden I would like to turn into not a food forest. I don't know if it's possible to plant trees there just based on the soil. I'll have to see, but would love to incorporate a food forest as well. Yeah, in terms of compost toilets, we're certainly open to that. We encourage it. We've had people coming asking if they can use their compost toilets, and absolutely. We're hoping that the tiny homesteaders will also harvest their own water and energy as much as is possible with a kind of a small footprint. Yeah, we have so many ideas, but I'm trying to keep from getting ahead of myself, and I'm just continuing to observe because it's something new every day. But yeah, that's just kind of a quick overview of all the things going around in my head.
It'll be a decades-long project.
Yeah. So.
And so that kind of leads into my last question. I think is, what do you see your role being on the property? Are you gonna live in one of the tiny homes? Like, are you kind of going to be kind of like the caretakers, managers? Like, what do you see your position there being over the next while?
Yeah, we'll definitely be living there. So initially that's there's a barn loft that we're fixing up there. So that'll be our dwelling, which is maybe a little bit larger than a tiny house, but not by much. So still small living. And that's one of the kind of the foundational buildings on site that will also have kind of the shared laundry and the storage for skis and bikes and tools and so on, and kind of be a gathering spot for campfires or other gatherings. So in the traditional sense, we'll be a landlord. with the renters, and will be a kind of a like a site manager for the Airbnbs or other types of guest stays. And to start with, that'll be kind of a co-management with an owner of a tiny house, but also potentially we might have our own units there that we would rent out for nightly stays. And then kind of a curator of projects and all the projects that Abby was talking about, kind of figuring out what are the skill sets that we have in the community, who's interested in what's kind of priority over what else, and kind of curating what might be interesting to do, either as kind of small projects or maybe more of a community-led project, and to co-create those opportunities with the folks that we're living around.
Yeah, and I don't like the term landlord, but I guess that's
It comes with the package.
I guess so. We want really a we want it to be everyone has something to contribute, and everyone has a skill set. And I think one of the really great things about being so early in the community development is there's still opportunity to bring up new ideas and incorporate those into the plans as we go forward. So we've had people asking about raising chickens and other ideas as far as how they would be able to use the space for their work, and we're certainly open to suggestions. We're really looking forward to seeing it all kind of come together.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't know at the beginning that you were a past PDC student of Verge, and that just adds like a whole other level to this interview that I wasn't expecting, because future viewers now know, like, okay, I'm thinking of taking a PDC, or I've taken a PDC, what's possible. And it's like anything. If you set your mind to it, it can be anything. Like here you guys are creating a little community for other people, but then it's also a property for yourselves that you get to experiment with and play with and start projects on and screw things up and try again. And so do you see this being kind of your final resting place? Is this, are you gearing up for more things to come? I know someone asked you about franchising, but are you going to take it one step at a time?
One step at a time. I think, I can't really see us leaving here. I definitely feel like this is where we want to be. And if we're able to be self-reliant and we have a great community of people around, and that we get to garden, and I don't really see anything better personally.
Growth is a funny thing, but I think there's a lot of space for us to grow within this site at Big Calm. With one community, there's a lot of things to do, and I think growth beyond that possibly, but it isn't our priority, and that's not why we started it. So it's trying to make the best of what we have here, and I think yourself and other PDC alum, kind of an open invitation to come out and experiment with us, and to recharge and try other things on this canvas with us.
Cool. Yeah. So I think that's all the questions that I have for you guys today. We'll say our thank yous, and then I'll stop the recording, and then we can kind of close it afterwards. But did you guys have any last words that you guys wanted to say before we stop the recording? I mean, actually, tell people where they can go to learn more.
Best place is bigcalm.ca. We're active on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, and hopefully soon we'll get our YouTube channel kind of up and running. So those are other places to interact with us. At the moment, if you're interested in staying at Big Calm as a renter, we have the Homesteader questionnaire. So that's kind of our pre-application process, and it opens the conversation for who you are and what you're looking for, and what your house requirements are, that sort of thing. Those are pretty much the main things, and where we have a newsletter as well on our website, and that's kind of for anything around the investment campaign or other special events. That's where we typically announce those.
Or just updates on the project so people can kind of follow along.
Yeah. Anybody listening, definitely go check out the website. I will also say that I love the layout of your website. Whoever designed it did a really good job. So even if you don't want to go and live there, just simple website, just go and look.
Spend some time at the website. Yeah, he did a really good job.
Thank you.
You did that?
He did that. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Good job.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. The marketing experience pays off, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will, to all of you listeners, in the future, or I guess in the present at the time that you're listening to this, thanks so much for tuning in. Go check out Big Calm and have an awesome day.